Hello and welcome to episode 5 of season 2 of Shoponomics. My name is Paul Stephen and I'm your host today, and today's episode is called Managing Multiple Brands and Localisation at Scale. Joining me today we have Anuradha D, currently e-commerce product lead at Whitbread. Welcome Anu, it's great to have you.
Thank you.
You've had some pretty interesting roles over your career, so there's loads to talk about here. But first, I'd like you to sort of just introduce yourself, really, rather than me do it, and tell us a little bit about your e-commerce journey.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. So I started my career in IT and then moved to e-commerce in 2005, whilst I was still working with fig leaves. So in all my roles across travel, hospitality, retail, my role has always been split into two. So one part is managing e-commerce and digital marketing. And because of my IT career, I've also been working as a product manager, creating and managing the digital development roadmap and working with multiple stakeholders, both internal and external. I am very passionate about growing brands organically. And as we know, in today's day and age, the paid media budgets can be quite tight. So I'm always looking for opportunities to work with lean paid budgets and how I can maximize the ROI. So that's my sort of experience working across multiple sectors.
Brilliant. So I mean, where you are now, you're managing actually sort of multiple brands within the Whitbread Group and multiple websites, supporting multiple locations, different restaurants. Actually, but before I dive in, sorry, this is an interactive event. So what that means is anybody who's joining or listening in can sort of dive in, ask a question. So if you have a question for Anu, please do raise your hand and click the button at the bottom of the screen. And I can either do them for you or we can let you join in as well. And don't forget to use emojis and whatever as well. You can do that as we go. So let's get started. So like I say, you've got lots of restaurants, lots of brands within the group. So just sort of, I don't know, maybe set that and paint us a picture. How many brands, how many locations, what are you dealing with? What's the challenge?
Yes, so I am responsible for everything online from a restaurant's perspective. So we've got 6 restaurant brands. You may have heard of a few of them, but I'll still give you the names. So it's Beefeater, which is one of our steak restaurants. We've got Bar and Block, which is also one of our steak restaurants. Then we've got some value pub brands, which are basically Brewers Fayre, Table, and Cookhouse and Pub. And then we've got Whitbread Inns, which is pretty much your local pub down the road. So between all of these brands, as you can imagine, there are very different demographics of customers as well. From a location perspective, we've got, it's basically up and down the country. So, Midlands, Yorkshire, Bedfordshire, East Anglia, Essex, you name it all. We've got a restaurant or maybe more than one restaurant and maybe more than one of these brands in the locations that, our audiences are listening in from.
So how many restaurants is that across the 6 brands?
So that is over 430 restaurants across the 6 brands.
Wow, and there's good, like you said, there's quite a difference between the types of restaurant that are there. Some are sort of what I'd call sort of foodie pubs, really, and others are more kind of posher restaurants. So how are those, from your perspective, maybe how different are those kind of different types of customers and users, etc.?
Yeah, so basically, if I just start with something like the Bar and Block restaurants, we have just over 20 of them, and they are mostly in city center locations. So what that basically means is that, the audience for that type of restaurant is going to be very different to a value pub restaurant, where, of course, the importance of, value for money, it's family friendly. So those are all like the examples of Brewers Fayre, Cookhouse and Pub, and Table. And then with your Beefeater, it's again a steak restaurant where you've got it's again a family restaurant, but with slightly older children, families with older children, and you know when we are looking at menu creation, etc., we also try and differentiate the food, the dishes that we offer, and of course the price points are also very, very different.
So, in terms of the sort of challenge you have, which is, I guess, driving traffic to any of those restaurants and to make a booking, how are you? How are you? Yeah, talk to us a little bit about that journey. I suppose. What's your first goal?
Yeah, so we use, of course, local marketing techniques. We've of course got the website, which where customers can book a table via the restaurant booking page. We've got all of the digital marketing channels that we are using, so paid media, CRM, paid social, display, advertising. So all of the digital marketing channels, we are using all of them. And of course, people walk into our restaurants as well to dine in. So a lot of traffic, which is offline traffic, not web traffic or digital traffic, which comes. So yeah, variety of online and offline ways that customers actually find us. Many for those people where the restaurants are very local to them, of course they just come in, and the interesting thing is, whilst we call the restaurants as Beefeater or by the brand name, local people refer to their local restaurants just by the name of the restaurant. So for
Mhm.
example, the Halfway House, which is quite close to us in Dunstable. um, so yeah, so variety of ways, and we do a lot of sort of local advertising as well, um, via leaflet drops and all of that kind of thing, print media, etc. And yeah, customers find us. We also find that a lot of people, because these brands have been around for quite a while, people also find us like directly. So they know the brand, so they will just come to our restaurants, either via online or offline.
So, I mean, you've got 430 different restaurants there. So you've got,
Mhm.
I think you're only a very small team. So you've got national campaigns, sort of at a brand level, and then effectively you've got local things going on. And I guess a lot of those individual restaurants, pubs,
Yes.
have got their own sort of individual
Mhm.
campaigns. So how are you dealing with that? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So the most important thing, I'm just going to quote a couple of stats from HubSpot, which is basically 97% of people learn more about a local company or brand online,
Mhm.
and 88% of mobile online searches for local brands or businesses result in either a call or a visit within one day. So for us, whilst we do all of the national campaigns, so we create or we have been creating a lot of content on the website. So we've got landing pages at a national level, and with our SEO techniques or tactics, we have also started creating local level pages, because it's really important to localize the website, adding location based terms. So location based pages, and these make it easier for customers to find information like the name of the restaurant, the address, the phone number, and also events, etc., that are happening in those restaurants. So for us, it's really important that we are constantly optimizing the local pages of the website. The other very important thing that we do is we use a platform called Yext to create and syndicate all of our local restaurant listings. So what happens is, through that particular platform, you can syndicate all of that information to other third-party websites, to other directories, And customers, of course, are able to leave reviews via those platforms. And these help to drive both, digital and traffic, which is offline as well. But the most important thing that we need to do is to claim all of our local listings. That's really important. So the more we optimize the listings, either on the Yext platform or the restaurant pages, it really helps Google, rank all of our restaurants. Reviews is a really, really important area as well, because of course, when people search on Google, the most important thing that Google wants to present to customers is, restaurants with good reviews. So what I would say is, for me, as a part of the overall strategy that I'm working on, it is investing in local SEO to rank locally for relevant terms and keywords. And one of the tools which I use quite a lot is Google Trends. Of course, we do paid advertising, which also helps, to send traffic to those local pages that I've already spoken about. And one of the other important things is, with paid advertising, you can also add relevant local information to the ads. So, for example, I'll just take not a restaurant example, but for example, you're looking for a local locksmith in X area, or what is their phone number? You can add that to your ads. Or this particular brand serves a particular area. So you can add and optimize all of those information to the ads. And of course, last but not least, social media, from setting a location in the profile to tagging the location for each of the posts. So we do a lot of social media, both organic and paid social media. So those are mainly the ones from an e-commerce sort of perspective that we look at. From a local perspective, as I mentioned about local advertising, being active in the local community, local sponsorships, you know, print marketing materials, all of those, we use both at our restaurants and at strategic sort of out of home areas, bus stops and things like that.
So, I mean, I think each of those individual items you discussed feel normal to me, but I'm intrigued to know how you manage, 430 versions of Google Local. Or Google Business, sorry, as it's now called.
Yeah.
Yext may help you with that. I don't know, but that seems a lot to do in a lot of volume that I think is a challenge for you.
Yes, of course, none of these can be turned sort of overnight or even sort of within a week. It is a very, very long, drawn out process. So we are constantly optimizing the locations. We use various tools, because SEO is quite important for us. So we use a variety of tools. We use a tool called Botify to actually help us with understanding, what do we need to do more from an SEO perspective, especially at a local level. So we are putting a lot of emphasis on our local pages. Yes, it takes time. It's hard graft. Let's put it that way.
Do you have any challenges around sort of just managing, because each of these places has got its own team and manager or whatever who would have an opinion on what you're doing?
Yeah, so we work very closely with the managers, as required. So when we started sort of creating content for the local restaurants, I sort of created a Microsoft form and I sent it out to the managers. So this is about a couple of years ago, and they fed back all the information, and then I use that information to share it with our copywriters. Because it has come from the general managers or the people who work in the restaurant, so they know the local area, they know about the restaurant really well. So we sort of, incorporate, they are a key stakeholder within the work that we do, and we sort of liaise with the managers, as often and as necessary. So yeah, it's like it's a little group because I'm sure, I wouldn't have been able to do it without them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you say, they're the only ones who knows what the local
Mm.
audience knows their pub as, even if it's not what's on the sign outside. So that's great. And in terms of once you've gotten to the site, obviously that's now, like you say, it's gonna you're trying to get them to either book one way or another,
Mhm.
or pick up the phone. I guess tell us how you do that and what you've tried.
Yeah, so basically, the landing pages that we create are sort of those pages which provide us or provide customers with the most information about any campaign or anything that we are running. So all of the local pages as well, they have information about the events that are running. So, for example, if we have a campaign like Breakfast with Santa, on the local page, there will be information that this particular location is supporting Breakfast with Santa, or it has an outdoor, garden for dining, or it has a soft play area. So we are doing a lot of work on the local pages. So the idea is what we have seen is over 75% of our traffic that hits the website is actually going to the local pages, and that is primarily due to the localization that we are talking about. Like
Mm.
when people search for something, they are searching for restaurants near me or restaurants in, I don't know, Bedfordshire, for
Yeah.
example. So, because of which, it's really important that we have all the correct and relevant information, both on our listings, which is on Yext, as well as on the local pages on the website. So once a customer lands there, the customer journey is pretty simple. They can either choose to call the restaurant and book, or there is a very clear call to action, which is the book button. So customers can actually click there and then go to the booking form, fill the booking form in, which is pretty straightforward. You need to choose either breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and off you go. Fill in some very basic information about yourself, and they can book. Now, one of the things that we do find since we launched Reserve with Google on our meta listings, meta search listings, that people who perhaps have already visited our restaurants, they don't necessarily always have to come to the website to book. They can actually book via the Reserve with Google
So they'll
option.
just Google the name and then it comes up
Yeah,
and they're already there. They
yeah.
haven't got to go into a landing page. They can book directly. Yeah.
They can book directly from there. It's a much quicker option. But of course, if they want to find more information about anything else, any of the campaigns and things
Mm.
like that, they're more than welcome to come to the website and find out all of that. But we're also doing a lot of event posts on our Google listings. So customers will not miss out because we are putting that information as well onto our
Mm.
Google listings. So whereby, any events like Father's Day, Mother's Day, etc., Easter, whatever that might be, we are constantly posting on there as well. So localization is really important. So I think the local pages and the listings on the Google listings are really important for us.
So you mentioned earlier using reviews as well. Particularly for restaurants, things like TripAdvisor are expected to
Mm.
be quite sort of important to you.
Yes, so TripAdvisor reviews, Google reviews, and we've got our internal review system as well. So we are using sort of all of those. One of the bits that we want to really start working on is, monitoring and using all of that feedback a lot more from an SEO perspective. So, because there are lots of questions that are asked through the reviews. So, what we really want to do is pick up some of those questions and add that to our FAQs, for example.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I mean that's always a there's usually loads of interesting data in search and reviews that should help you develop your product. Fair to say. And what other routes have you tried? Any other sort of things like TikTok or Instagram? Or how do they work for you?
Yeah, so from a social media perspective, we do Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. So we really started, Facebook as one of the sort of the key channels, and we do TikTok, but it is not for all brands. So we started testing TikTok for Bar and Block. That currently has worked quite well for us. So we are sort of trying to scope out which other brands that we want to sort of, it has to be for the right audience. So I think
Yeah, as I say,
that's really,
that's a younger audience as opposed to the sort of
yes.
family
Ex-
audience, if you like. So I'm intrigued to know what sort of content are you creating that works for that audience?
when it comes to kind of organic social, it's very fluid.
Uh-huh.
We don't want to bombard people with lots of prices, and that kind of information. It's more, generally what are our offerings. That we offer breakfast. Kids can come. You know, two kids can eat free with an adult. So some of those key messages, we are promoting, and it's more mainly the sort of the business as usual messages. When it comes to promoting, whether it's on Instagram or on TikTok, now TikTok, because it's basically for bar and block. So of course, anything that we are doing, so say like bottomless brunch that we have in all of our bar and block locations, we take some really good imagery, and we use influencers as well, for from a social media perspective. So yeah, so we're trying. I think it's one of those channels which we use it more as an awareness driving channel rather than a booking driving
Yeah,
channel.
yeah. But that's a lot of content you've got to create. It sounds like
Yes.
it to me anyway,
Yeah.
to keep up with that, and particularly something like TikTok where it needs to be sort of moving imagery
Mm.
rather than just
Lots of really,
graphics.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so how do you do that? Talk a little bit about your team or maybe some of the tools you use to kind of cope with that.
So we work directly with one of our digital marketing agencies. We've got sort of three people internally on our side. We
Hmm.
work very closely with our brand team. So there is quite a rigorous process in terms of making sure that we've got the right imagery, but it's also fun. So of course, photo shoots and all of that kind of things. And yeah, we prepare content. So our plans are put together in advance, signed off by all of the relevant stakeholders, and then yeah, it's straight into production, and then the we do all the postings on all the relevant social media channels. Yes, there is a lot of content, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it
Uh,
sounds like it. I just sort of intrigued to know kind of what sort of what sort of roles, because it's so complex. You become more like project managers than marketers, if you like, really, when
yeah,
you've got
so I think
a lot of things to do.
working very very closely with the agency, our digital marketing agency, making sure that there are lots of communications that sort of need to happen. I think communication is key, and making sure, because there are a number of stakeholders, as I mentioned. If you're doing a photo shoot, which food imagery do we want to do,
Yeah.
influencers going out, you know making sure that the restaurants are aware that influencers are coming. All of those little logistical points all have to sort of work quite cohesively in order to be able to produce the final output.
And are there any particular sort of tools you use? You've mentioned a couple so far from a sort of listings and search optimization point of view, but are you using any sort of
So we
tool?
use like social listening tools like, Sprout Social,
Hmm.
things like that. So we're constantly, sort of monitoring the sentiments and, what customers are saying. And of course, you've got Facebook, you've got reviews as well, so we try and sort of monitor all of them in tandem.
But how do you sort of, in terms of managing your campaigns and the stuff you use to publish on your website? What are your kind of go-to tools that you're using?
So within Whitbread, we use the full Adobe stack.
Right.
So of course we are using the CMS, the content management system, which is Adobe Experience Manager. That's
Mm.
what we're using currently to publish all of the content on the website. So we've done quite a bit of, development work to help our internal teams, be able to do things quickly. And there is quite a lot within in our pipeline as well in terms of developing, the systems also for our internal sort of teams. Um, of course, analytics. We again, like I said, because we use the full Adobe stack, so we use Adobe Analytics. Uh, we do A/B testing. using Adobe Target. Um, then, of course, from a CRM perspective, we use the Adobe Campaign Manager. So lots of tools for different channels that we are currently sort of using.
Mm. So, in terms of, I can't really ever do an interview now without talking about AI in one way or another. I don't know how if you're using it or using it at all, and dare I say, there's probably loads of it built into the Adobe stack anyway already. But how do you see? How are you maybe using AI in terms of all the work that you're doing, or maybe do you see you being using it in the future?
Yeah, so I think the AI piece currently, I use it personally, but I think from an internal perspective, we haven't sort of started using AI to, the potential right now. But I think definitely from a, you know, understanding of content and demographics and writing the content more for the audience, so I think those are definitely areas that that we will sort of be using going forward.
And is there any reason why you've not used it
No,
that
not
much
not
yet,
for
or?
any particular reason, because currently we've got copywriters,
Mm-hmm.
in place who are helping us write the content and the copy for
Mm-hmm. Mm.
all of our channels. So it's just one of those things that it's in the pipeline to use, but we haven't started using it straight away.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to. I think every good business is based on people, process, and tools. So I wanted to ask you, sort of, finish maybe on that in that kind of area. You've talked about some of it already, but um, what are the top skills, if you would say, are really needed for you to be able to perform in your role? What would you advise someone to go and learn right now? What's the thing that everyone should know?
For me, the sort of the top skills, of course, it all depends on the, people's interests, career goals, market demands, and
Mm,
all of that kind of things. However, for me, I think data is really, really important. To be able to have, analysts or even within teams, to analyze and derive the insights is definitely really important. The other thing which is quite important for me, as I've mentioned, all of this, the work that we do from actually starting from a concept to actually making it live, project management is another really, really important skill. So the ability to plan, to execute, and sort of manage projects efficiently is like really important. And I think the other important thing is, emotional intelligence on the soft skills side of things, you know, being very empathetic, being self-aware, managing relationships within wider teams and businesses. I think that's really important for fostering healthy, dynamic, and leadership skills.
I think that's great advice. I think it's great advice. What I have a 23-year-old daughter and a son who's at university, and I sort of look at that there and I go, what degree would I do to get to that point? It's an
Mm.
interesting place we are now where the range of skills you need and the jobs that exist, if you like, now don't sort of necessarily sit into nice, neat boxes anymore. All those three things you've just are not necessarily, there's a bit of, there's the data piece, then the project management kind of piece, and the emotional sort of the people piece, if you like. They're not necessarily, it's not many people excel at all of those at the same time, shall I say.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I think you build those experiences as you sort of, go through your career.
But to be a marketer in any role, you do need
You
all of
do
those
need,
right
yeah,
now.
absolutely.
And
It's all around people management and project management and, data management. It's really important.
so the next thing I would talk about is sort of like what would be your weekly, monthly sort of KPIs that you kind of measure yourself by, or what are the sort of the things you would have on your dashboard, if you like, to tell you that things are going well or not going well. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so I'm very, very data driven. So I think for it's not just only for myself. I also look at it from my team's
Mm,
perspective. Um, so for us, of course, the very, very hard KPIs is, of course, driving, bookings and covers
mm,
for the restaurants. But also, all of the sort of the if you were to ask me, those would obviously be sort of the top ones that we're constantly looking at.
mm.
But of course, in order to be able to drive those bookings and covers, you've got to look at all of the other sort of e-commerce KPIs that any e-com business would sort of monitor. Visits, conversion rate, time on site, bounce rate to a certain extent. I'd always take it with a pinch of
Yeah, I
salt.
was going to say, how do you do with
Um,
bounce rate? Because, like you say, most people, if they just want the address or to hit directions, that's
yeah,
going to be a
exactly.
bounce. It's not
So
necessarily a fail, is it?
yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. That's why I said, you just take it with a pinch of salt because that's what, people do. And, they might come to a local page and they may just look at the address or the phone number and off they go.
Mm,
But of course, there are lots of other tools that you can use in terms of, really understanding the user experience and the customer journey on the website, like tools like Glassbox, and then as I mentioned, we do A/B testing, etc. So
mm.
there are various ways in which you can monitor what exactly is happening on the website, how are customers behaving on the website. So yeah, so I think it's not just the very hard KPIs. It's also some of the softer KPIs that we need to be sort of looking at, and of course from a you know paid media perspective, it's of course the spend,
Mm.
um, the click throughs in with relation to all of the ads, the impressions, and then from a CRM perspective, it's all about the health of the database, etc. So we've got quite a neat little dashboard in terms of making sure that you know sort of the key stakeholders within the business have that that pulse constantly in terms of what's really
And do you
happening.
do you do that
And
weekly? Is that a weekly thing for you or a monthly?
yes, I mean very much. There are other things that we look at more so even from a daily perspective. Say a campaign has gone live, so we'll monitor that quite meticulously for a period of time. And yeah, so I think it's daily, but
Mm.
overall when we're looking at how have we been performing, then it's of course weekly when you create all the reports. But I like to catch things quickly as possible. So yeah, I look at all my data and analytics on a daily basis.
So you mentioned quite a few of them before, and obviously you use the Adobe suite quite a bit. But what are your go to channels? You got a new role tomorrow, new task. What would be your sort of go to channels and platforms that you would be your friend?
Uh, I think, of course, the bread and butter would be, of course, the brand or the company would, of course, need to have its website.
Yeah.
Um, Apart from that, of course, what other channels? It's it, it's really important that we are, finding the customers where they are rather than wanting them to sort of
Mm.
switch channels. So in some other companies where I've worked, we've always used like chatbots and virtual assistants and personalized recommendations and things like that. So I think those would be sort of the key areas that I would be looking to so that I can via the brand serve the customer to the best possible way.
Mm. Mm. So we're coming to the end of the time now, so I'm just going to ask if anybody's got any questions out there, and we'd love to hear. So one of the last things that I'd like to ask you, Anu, is we like to hear about the sort of the good and the bad on the show. So I'd be interested to find out if you've got any advice or stories or from your experience which you would do different. Is there anything that you're very proud of that you've achieved, or things that you would would do differently?
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to be able to do a lot of testing, for whichever channel. Initially, it was quite hard for us to get any resource to sort of do a lot of testing on the website. But because I come from a CRO background myself, so I always had it sort of within me that I just need to keep that drumbeat. And yeah, now we are able to. So all I would say is, don't sort of give up if you currently don't have resource or you don't have, think creatively. And that's what I did. I had no copywriter. That's how I used the general managers to get information. And then I worked with the premiering teams to, support us with writing copy. So it's just all about, sort of thinking outside the box, because, most times it's, you not get a ready-made sort of resource and lots of resource. So it's all about how you are using, uh, you know, um, the capacity creatively to get the best outcome possible.
Yeah, I've always found that testing, as I always say this to clients, is testing never goes wrong, right? Because even if you test A versus B and you work out that A, what you originally had, was the best answer, that's a brilliant test because you've identified that you're already in a good place. But equally, I've seen, and this is the same by, I don't know, just adding an S to a search term or moving, a box from being on the right to the left, you can get a sort of 40% difference change. Have you had any experiences like that where you just kind of have made what you consider a very small change, but quite a marked difference?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did, and this is about another brand where I worked, a travel brand. So one of the things we did was we basically on mobile, this was one of the tests that we did. Um, we just added the search option, like literally as the first thing, that when people landed on the website, that's what they would see. Previously, the search button was quite sort of hidden. So, we made that change, and instantly you would know that, people do when they come to a holiday company, they are looking for, especially on mobile, they are looking for sort of search. So that was one of the changes we did, and it instantly, helped us to, improve our conversion rates overall in terms of, the customer experience and the number of bookings sort of going through sort of search, rather than putting pressure on the call center, where, people can call to book. So that was an instant hit.
Great. Yeah, I just find it bizarre that sometimes the smallest thing can make
Yes.
and that's what I mean. Well, you have to test that because you
Yes.
wouldn't, you look at it and go, well, no, it looks fine, or no, surely moving that isn't going to make a difference, and it's crazy. So yeah, testing is absolutely essential.
And it's incremental as well. Like you test something, you get an output. Especially if you're working in agile, you try and push that live and then do the next bit, and so it's always incremental.
And you mentioned earlier some of the other brands that you were at. Are there any other sort of things? Did you do that? Were you able to do sort of testing in those sorts of things, or was that very different sort of role maybe when you were there?
No, so I have worked as a CRO, as a conversion rate optimization specialist. So yeah, I have actually built, created tests and done it. But tools can be quite different. So in one of my previous roles, I've used, and actually in quite a few, I've used Visual Web Optimizer as a tool. Currently here, we use Adobe Target. So we work with more specialists when we are using Adobe Target because of the nature of the platform. But generally, A/B testing tools are meant to be used by marketers. So it's getting, the platforms are getting really user friendly in terms of, being able to use them. You don't need to know an awful lot of coding to be able to do an A/B test.
Right. Well, look, we've sort of coming to the end of our normal sort of 45-minute slot. I suppose all it remains for me to say is thank you very much. Thanks. It's It's been lovely to talk to you, hear your insight into how you do things, certainly at Whitbread. Thank you for everybody who has either tuned in and or is listening on sort of catch up as a podcast. I just want to say thank you to you for coming as well, and obviously this audio recording will also be available on shoponomics.co.uk, Apple Podcast, and Spotify Podcast, or any other podcast channel you choose to use. And this is actually the last in our Series 2. We plan to start up Series 3 again early May, so look out for that. If you are not a subscriber, please head over to the website or onto LinkedIn and subscribe to us there. So that's it from me, really. And so one last thank you to you, Anna. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Not at all. It's been great to have you. Goodbye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.